Okay, then we should just start then.
Mhm.
So can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yes, so I am Esther Min, now Esther Maxwell. I just got married.
Congratulations.
I Thank you. I am the director of programs for Unlikely Heroes. I oversee all of our programs, ranging from our restoration homes to our prevention and outreach and education. And so I oversee pretty much all of our programs that happen in Unlikely Heroes. And I'm a part of the operations and just the daily activity of the organization.
Mhm. So how did you get involved in this? Like, how did you get involved in working with Unlikely Heroes or working for Unlikely Heroes?
I have experience in a long history of working with at-risk youth. In college, I worked at a crisis nursery and provided respite care, as well as when I graduated, I worked in a group home, so a
Mhm.
managed group home facility for boys between 6 to 18 who were extremely emotionally and psychologically, they just had a lot of problems. And so it was a facility that had these boys there that they didn't qualify to go to juvenile hall, but it was like right underneath that. It was level
Okay.
12. And so I worked there and I also taught there. So I had years of experience working in managed care as well as working with um, at-risk and children in need. And so I got connected with Erica when I lived in California,
Mm.
and I was working down in San Diego and was working with some college students, and they were super passionate about human trafficking,
Yeah.
and we hosted one of the first fundraisers for Unlikely Heroes all the way back in like 2012, I think. Um, and so
It-
I know her through, yeah, I know it's really, really, our worlds crossed a long time ago. And then one of my students graduated and then became an intern at Unlikely Heroes. And then from an intern, got a job and then started working for Unlikely Heroes. And so, funny story is I was on a layover coming back from Washington, D.C. I stopped into Dallas to see, one of the students that was working for Unlikely Heroes,
Yeah.
and I connected with Erica and reconnected with her, and she was like, "Hey, we're looking to fill a position. Are you looking for a job?" And so, in a matter of 6 weeks of going through interviews, submitting my resume, like figuring everything out, I ended up moving to Dallas and started working for Unlikely Heroes. So that's kind of the long-winded version of how I got involved.
That's crazy.
I know, right?
You didn't go to layover in Dallas, you wouldn't be on the same path.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
find that so fascinating.
Yes. Yes. Who knew? Who knew that
I so
five hour
fascinating.
5 hour layover would get me a job and move me all the way from California to Dallas.
It's
And
insane.
then now to get married and find my husband here.
Isn't it weird how stuff like that works? I just
I
think that's so
know.
cool how just little things, like, lead to such
It,
bigger things.
it's true. You just never know. You just got to follow your heart and follow and trust that you are making the right choices
I
and
know,
see how the
seriously. Trust
right.
yourself, follow your
It's
gut.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That is the biggest lesson, and I will preach it on every corner. Trust your gut and trust yourself.
It's an important lesson
Mhm.
to learn. But
Absolutely.
so you work for Unlikely Heroes. So, like, from an outsider view, what does Unlikely Heroes do? Like, what is their main purpose or what's their main goal?
So our main goal is to stop human trafficking, is to end human trafficking in our generation and in our lifetime.
Mhm.
And how we do that is through recovery. It's through prevention and education and outreach, and also through our restoration homes.
Mhm.
And so we have three major programs that Unlikely Heroes runs, and that is um, our restoration homes. We provide homes for kids who've been trafficked from the ages of, as young as 5 to as old as 18.
Mhm.
And we also have prevention and education outreach programs that educate that young adults, students, community members, first responders. We found that education and prevention go hand in hand. And once you are educated and understand how to spot human trafficking, how to not get yourself involved in situations to be trafficked, the likelihood is a lot less. It decreases. And so we also do outreach and, our teams do outreaches in kind of what we call hot zones, which is cities and areas that are known for high trafficking. We go to the brothels and the bars and do outreach there, and we provide emergency medical care, any basic needs, food, support, and through that and through gaining in relationship, we can then help to recover them, to rescue them. And then, yeah.
That's amazing. All amazing
Mhm.
part. And so would you say like you pretty much focus a majority of your efforts on child trafficking?
Yes,
So how
absolutely.
prevalent would you say like child trafficking is around the world? And I know this is like a hard question to answer, but like how prevalent is it in other parts of the world? And then how prevalent is it in the United States? I know that's like a loaded question or it's a hard question to answer, but if you
Yeah,
could,
I mean,
that'd be great.
mhm. So the latest stats right now is that there's 40.3 million people trapped in human trafficking. And human trafficking encompasses three major, I guess, areas. It's labor, trafficking, it's sex trafficking and exploitation, and then it's the third one is totally it's like indentured, like
Yeah.
servitude kind of thing. Um, so it's kind of loosely broken up into those three things of trafficking. And with mainly with children, we're seeing, I think the latest stats is like, um, I don't even remember. I'm sorry. I don't even know. I should know the latest stats because it's my
Like,
job. But it is prevalent. It's very prevalent within the world internationally and in the US. I think this misconception that trafficking happens over there internationally, not in the US, is really that's a big misconception.
yeah, that's what I want
And
to ask you about because it is
mhm,
even like even I have that misconception where it's like, oh, there's no way like with like sturdy government that we have that we could be like that something
mhm,
so terrible could happen like right under our nose, but yet it does. And that's why I was kind of asking like for people that watch this and they don't know that like child
mhm,
trafficking and sex trafficking and labor trafficking, it all does happen in the United States as well as around
absolutely.
the world.
And it's high in home youth homelessness and runaways, and as well as youth that are in child protective services. So foster care,
Mhm.
child CPS, kids that are in the system, it's a lot higher for them to be vulnerable to trafficking.
Mhm.
And so if you can even compare those numbers of how many kids are in foster care, how many kids are in the system, in just the US alone, it's in the millions, right?
Yeah.
And so if you can see that is, if you see that number and then you see that most of them are all vulnerable and at risk to trafficking, and we see a high amount in foster youth, that just kind of gives you an idea. But then there's this other space of, I feel like a lot of people don't realize in the US is that it's not just the underprivileged, and it's not just at risk, it's not low income areas. Yes, it's prevalent there because they're more vulnerable, absolutely. But you can see it anywhere, in any neighborhood, in any in any city, honestly. Even in the affluent areas, middle class areas, you'll see trafficking happening, and it happens under your nose just because of social media and what we the wonderful world of the internet. We are all connected, and it connects us in so many amazing ways. But then, as we
There's also
can
a dark
see, is there is, and a lot of I wouldn't say a lot, like, so trafficking here in the US looks very different. It's a lot of grooming, what we call grooming, where you know, do you want me to continue to talk about this?
No, yeah, please.
Can I
No.
keep going? Okay. So grooming happens where, you know, whether it's in, we're seeing a lot in social media. So, you know, you slip into somebody's DMs, you make a comment on their TikTok, you know, or you have matched in some way, you know, in your gaming or whatever, you know, through comments. And it's usually somebody who's pretending to be a younger person. And then they'll say, hey, you're pretty, or I like that picture, or do you want to be a model, or do you want to be an influencer? And, you know, that relationship has started, that conversation starts, and then they build trust. And then they say, hey, let's meet. Let's take some pictures, or can you send me pictures, or, you know, whatnot. And through that process, in the beginning, it seems very harmless. It seems very much like, oh, this could be my shot, you know, or this guy loves me, or this girl loves me. He's my boyfriend, she's my girlfriend.
Yeah.
And then what happens is through that, and through that connection and that vulnerability, I think that all of us have, they're groomed to then be coerced into trafficking and in trafficking situations.
And that also brought up another point. It's like another misconception usually people have is that it's like kind of like a stranger. It's like that like back alley kidnapping that trafficking is. But what you just said, that what you just said, it's like the person like gets into like a trustworthy relationship with you and then starts like the acts of like trafficking. And so
Yeah.
isn't it true? I'm just going off of, I don't know if this is completely true, but isn't it true that a majority of trafficking happens with someone that you know or with someone that you trust?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
especially for kids too, because they don't know any better.
Mm-hmm.
And is that for
And
a majority in the US? Is that like happen mostly in the US or is it everywhere?
I mean, it's pretty much everywhere, but I think the idea of, you know, the Hollywood video, like the Hollywood movies of, you know, where people just get taken off the street, you know, or kidnapped, or, you know, they find themselves in this precarious situation and then they get stolen.
Mhm.
That doesn't really happen as often as being, you know, in a trusted relationship, or who you think you can trust, and you know, and then they have other motives. And so yes, that's definitely very prevalent here in the US. But you can also see that internationally.
Mhm.
A lot of our homes, a lot of the girls in some of our homes in like the Philippines, um, and in Thailand too, you know, these parents are sending their kids into the big city because they're from small villages wanting a better life. And
Mhm.
so they trust an auntie or an uncle or a friend to help them get schooling in the big city. And then what happens is they think that they're going, you know, to get a better life, to have better access, or they think that they're going to go work, you know, somewhere that's legitimate. And then what happens is that's not the case. So again, it's another trusted individual or somebody that they knew that then takes them from their home, but it's, you know, permission given, but then it's for other reasons.
Yeah.
And then we do have cases and situations where girls are kidnapped or they are taken, especially, you know, in more volatile areas where there's militia, where there's, you know, political unrest, and, you know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of different things happening. That definitely happens, and we're seeing that. And
Mhm.
then there is that percentage of parents and of family members, you know, directly trafficking their kids.
Yeah.
We've definitely seen that as well, just because they, you know, need more money, and especially with COVID,
Mhm.
what was already, you know,
Bad.
hard for people to, you know, economically live
Yeah.
with the shutdowns, it made it even harder. And so what happened, especially in COVID as well, is everything went underground a little more because, you know, buildings and bars and things were shut down like globally.
Mhm.
And so what we were seeing and what our teams were seeing is that it became very much more hidden, behind closed doors on the internet. being passed around house to house versus more public, as if you would see in a red light district.
Yeah. So your organization works along like the front line. So like how does
Mhm.
your organization like pinpoint and also like get these young girls out of the cycle of trafficking? Like how does your organization work? How does your organization pretty much work on getting these girls out of the cycle?
Mhm. So we partner, we have people on the ground that we partner with and different organizations that we, honestly, it's, it takes a network to defeat a network is
Yeah.
something that we say. And it's working together across the board, not just with local people on the ground, but it's, working with the government. Sometimes it's working with what would be equivalent to social services in every country, to the police, to community members, to first responders. And so one of the things that we found is there are hot spots or hot zones in, the world where there's the amount of people that are getting trafficked is in higher numbers. And so you'll see that somewhere in like Thailand with the red light district. You'll see that in Europe, in Russia, in the Middle East. You'll see that in the Philippines, where there's kind of higher percentage and amount of people that are getting trafficking. And so we have found those areas to be present in. And what our team does, and our home directors and the partners that we partner with, is they go out and they do outreach. They create relationships. They build relationships. If you see, another thing that Hollywood says is that, you're chained up to a wall, or you're chained up and you can't leave. And yes, there is instances like that, but with grooming, with coercion, it's all mental. It's this a mental trap, right? So they use fear, they use threats to make someone believe that they can't leave, or that something will happen to them or their family.
Yeah.
So even if you're walking down and you see, people in a bar, they have happy smiles on their face. A lot of these girls, it's because they've had to figure out how to survive, right? And so one of the things that we do is we go in, we create relationships, we
Yeah.
provide basic needs. We, help them understand that there is a way out, and that there is a way to be able to escape. And so in that, it takes time and relationship to then have, the girl or even the boy have the opportunity to get free, and to be recovered. And that's what we would call direct rescue.
Mhm.
And then we also do work with the local government and the social services that, will do raids, and they will go in and they will they will do, direct rescues in that ways and through raids, and then they would come in through the system. And so we work with social workers and we work with the government to then place them into our homes. And so there's different avenues of which these kids come into our home.
Yeah. And so, oh, well, that's a perfect segue, actually. So your organization, I think, in my opinion, is like one of the most amazing things your organization does is the restoration homes that you have. What is it? Three countries?
Yeah, we're in three
Three
countries. I
countries.
had to think about it. Yeah.
And can you like talk about what the restoration homes are and like what the purpose is? I know you touched on it before, but like
Yeah.
just as like a
So
answer, I guess.
absolutely. Yeah. So these homes, so we have these homes that are in three countries: in Mexico, in Thailand, and in the Philippines. And so we have 4 homes in Mexico, we have a home in Thailand, and a home in the Philippines.
Mhm.
And so these homes all function very similarly, but also very differently, because it's depending on which country they are, right? And so in our Philippines home, we'll do a lot more direct rescues, going into the brothels and the bars and places where the kids are vulnerable. In Thailand and in Mexico, we work closely with social workers and social services to help place those kids into our home. And we do direct rescues, but a lot of the kids, a majority of our kids are placed because of social services.
Yeah.
And so with that, all the kids that come into our homes have been sexually exploited. They've been, and so when they come in, we provide safe housing, education, trauma-informed therapy. We provide an assessment for each child to see where they're at, because a lot of times they are trafficked at a young age and they don't get to go to school. They don't get to, have a normal life as what we would know to be. And so they have delays in socially, psychologically, and in education. And so we do an assessment. We have a psychologist that's there, a psychiatrist. We have a team of people that work to assess, and then each child is provided kind of a plan of how to help them recover and have and restore, right?
Yeah.
And so our home, no matter what age they come in, and it is for kids, so it's under 18, but when they come in, we assess, and then our biggest goal is for them to graduate high school. And so once they graduate high school, it could be honestly at any age, but just because of the delays. But once they graduate high school, then we help to kind of transition them into adulthood. And so whether it's going to college, it's going to a trade school, helping them figure out how to live on their own, budget, all of those different things that, you would need to know as an adult, we help in that transition as well. And so our homes all provide those things to help the healing journey for each child.
And so how many survivors would you say, how many people are in your homes right now?
So we have, it ranges, but we have about 100 kids that are in our home, like
Really?
across the board.
Amazing.
Yeah, and so we, it's truly an amazing thing to be able to partner with individuals on the ground as well, to just be able to partner in recovery and rescues, and then see these lives transformed.
Yeah. And so I know when I was learning a lot about this, it's like one thing to hear about all the statistics and things like that, but it's another thing to like hear the stories of a survivor. Are you able to share any stories about the survivors that you've came across that are willing to share their story, of course? Just so like someone could get like a deeper, in-depth, like kind of perspective or view of what it is actually like to be trafficked, or what it's like to go through one of these traumatic events.
So we actually have a family in one of our homes, and the older two girls came into our home, and they were, I believe, 11 and 13, and so our home director had gone and was educating teachers about how to spot human trafficking, how to be able to see, whether, how to spot the signs as a teacher. And so one of the teachers actually called our home director after that training, was like, I think there's these two girls in our school in my classroom, and they are showing those signs. Will you come and talk to them? And so she came and she, spoke with the girls, and, they called social services, and they had found in that interview and in that conversation that the girls were being trafficked. And so we worked with social services, and then they got placed into a home. And, with any story, and with any trauma, it's not like, okay, tell us what happened, right? You build trust. Even in our home, there's no pressure of having that conversation in any way. It's letting them lead in their journey. And so it was about 3 months into, so we knew that they were being trafficked. We were able to confirm that, but what the actual story was, we didn't know, and we weren't going to push them to tell us, right? We were going to just let them have their journey of healing. And as they were meeting with our therapist, as they were going through group therapy and all of those different things, for that trust to build. And
Yeah.
so it was like 3 months in, the oldest, she came and said, I need to go to the doctor. And so, our policy really is, we respect, and we respect the privacy. So when a child and when a girl comes and says, I need to go to the doctor, we absolutely have them go. And so she went, and the doctor did an exam, and they, were able to tell it, she was able to say she was having a lot of stomach pain, and like it was, really hurting. And they had found out they ran tests, and she had STDs. And so the doctor, and she's 13, right? At that age, I think she was like 12 or 13.
Mhm.
And so that then the doctor started kind of asking questions about what happened, how did this happen?
Mhm.
Could she talk about it? And she started opening up, and she shared that and through the course of time after going to the doctor, she
Yeah.
shared that her mom actually would give her boyfriend would come, or a man would come and take her to the hotel, and they would take pictures of her, and other men would come into the room, and she would share that this would be happening, and then she would come home, and her mom would be given money by this man. And so she and her younger sister were being trafficked
Mhm.
for money. And then it was about probably 8 months in, about a year, they started sharing, like, this is amazing. We get to learn, we get to go to school, we feel safe, we have a, warm bed, we have
Yeah.
food, we have all these things, but our heart still goes out to our younger siblings. And so we were like, what? Younger siblings? And so we had found out that they had a younger brother, and as well as a younger sister who at that time was about 4 years old.
Were they being
And so
well?
they were also being trafficked as well. And so at that time, we were also getting ready to open our boys' home that was in Mexico. And so we were able to work with, based on the information the girls were giving us, the sisters, and working with, social services and just the different people and connection that we have,
Mhm.
we were able to locate the younger sister and the brother. And so they came in, and they were also being trafficked. They were being used for child pornography, and they were being sold for sex. And the younger one she was 4 years old. And she was the youngest that came. She was so tiny, and her name is actually Ellie.
Mhm.
She was so tiny, her feet didn't even touch the ground when she was sitting in the chair. But if you can imagine, even at a young age of 4, being trafficked and used for child pornography and being sold for sex. And so we brought them in, and we brought the brother in, and it was like this beautiful moment of reunification of this whole family. Like they hadn't seen each other, they'd
Yeah.
been separated, and that journey continues. And we never really we never ask them as a survivor, tell us the details, because
Mhm.
that's we never want to exploit our children, and we never want them to feel like their story is being used to be exploited. There is space for them to share and to tell, especially in therapy, and that's protected. But they were able to share just these different moments of a man coming in and taking pictures, and having to go and being there all night, where different people come in and out consecutively. All of the 4 kids in this family all had very similar experiences and stories of being trafficked in a hotel room right on the border,
Mhm.
and then their mom getting money for it. And unfortunately, we found out later on that there was still a little sister,
Mhm.
and that little sister is still out there, and we weren't able to. She fled with the younger sister, and so we weren't able, like the cops weren't able to find her, and and so we're still actively trying to find the youngest.
Yeah, stories like that, it's hard to hear stories like that because it's like it happens so much, and there's like you said, there's millions of people that this could be
Mhm.
happening to, and it's like nobody really knows about it. It's like I don't know, for me, it's just really hard to hear stories like that because it's like it's real, like
Yeah.
that happens and nobody really knows about it. And that's why I think like organizations like what you guys do with your restoration homes is so important because it's really like changing the lives of these people. And so thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that story. Um,
Absolutely. And the oldest, she, she just graduated this last year,
mhm,
and she is going into university. She's in her own apartment. She's in university. She's going to start her first year as studying physical therapy. So like
that's
it,
amazing.
she she came in at so young. She had all of the trauma and the healing journey of a child. It can be many. I mean, she's still, of course, working through those things,
Mhm,
but having graduated the program, she's now going to university. She's going to school. She has dreams of a future, and she's living those dreams. And she's going into school for physical therapy. So we're super proud of her.
yeah,
You
see,
know.
that's amazing.
And there's another story too. We have a girl. She in our Philippines home. She came in um, on our very first rescue, and our very first home opening was in the Philippines in 2011, and she was part of the first 10 girls that came in,
Mhm,
and she was trafficked starting at 10 years old. And she was, in a brothel, and she would say that she had nothing to her name, and she felt like a dog. She had this little thin mattress on a floor, and men would come in and she would be sold, and she just felt like she had nothing. She felt like an caged animal in an 8 by 8 room. And when we, you know, when we opened the home, she was the one of the 10 girls that came in. And since then, she, worked really hard to study. She caught up in her studies. She graduated high school. She said she gave the commencement speech at her graduation, and she went to school and did I believe it was a 2-year program or a 3-year program, where she worked really hard, and now she's actually married and has a kid on the way, and she is living this restored life of, within 10 years, 11 years of having come through and just been a part of the program, and been a part of the restoration home and that healing journey, and having access to education, having access to all of these different things, and is now married, has a kid, has a baby on the way, and she has made it her purpose to go into brothels and go into jails and go into schools to tell people and educate young girls about trafficking,
mhm.
and to so that it wouldn't happen to someone else. So it's amazing to see all these girls coming through and just getting recovered, and going through the process of restoration, and then being able to have a future to dream about.
No, that I'm exactly, those stories are amazing to hear because it's like they were able to like something like that when something like that happens, a lot of people like it's hard for them to move past it, but like with with the right support and with the right people in your life, you're able to move past it and you're able to live a complete life even with those things
Yeah,
that have happened in your past. And I think that's amazing. It's really hard for that. So those girls are they're strong, they're amazing, they're amazing. They're able to move past that. And I just think stories like
they
that are
are.
inspirational in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And those 2 stories, they brought up one important thing, which is, like, the role of education and how important education is. Both, like, with the teacher, like, being able to recognize what trafficking is because of education, and how education was able to change the lives of the survivors after what happened to them happened. Like,
Mm-hmm.
can you kind of, like, touch on how important education is in the healing process and in the process to combat human trafficking?
Absolutely. We really emphasize and focus on education in both educating, individuals in prevention
Mhm,
and communities, and girls and boys and young adults. But then that component of education, of learning and getting their high school diploma is so important, because with education, there's knowledge, right? And there's empowerment, and there's ability to see the world and experience the world in a way that opens doors that normally you wouldn't have in the life that they had previously.
Mhm.
And so with that, they get to go to university, they get to go to trade school, they get to have access to those things, because getting their high school diploma opens those doors. And
Yeah.
then when they are able to access, becoming, going to trade school and becoming a hairdresser or a baker or a plumber or electrician, or going to a university and becoming a physical therapist or a psychologist, or, those things, that opens the door to jobs that they normally could have never had before. And with that comes economic stability. And when you have economic stability in a way that your basic needs are met, you're able to thrive. Like, you're able to, be able to be a functioning individual in society when you're able to have access to those things.
Yeah.
And so it's that two-part thing of education and outreach is so important, because sometimes even, when we're going to the bars and stuff, we'll talk to the girls and, we'll ask them questions in a way where it's not invasive in any way, but sometimes they don't even realize that they're being trafficked. They don't realize, I mean, they know that it's wrong and that they don't like it, but they don't realize that there's a way out, because they've been just so coerced and they've been so
Yeah.
manipulated to believe that that's their life.
Mhm.
Um, and so even being able to go and say, hey, there is a future for you. This is not, we can help.
Yeah.
Um, there's people that can help, has really opened that up. But then also prevention and educating community members and individuals like you, like being able to talk about this with your friends and your school and your community
Mhm.
of, hey, this is happening. This is not just out there. It's not just in the Philippines. It's not just in Thailand. It's not just in some third world country, but it's happening here. And it's happening. It could be happening to my friend in high school, my best friend. Um, and so when we're able to help educate and bring awareness to that,
Yeah.
then more people are able to spot that. There's all you'll there's so many, even in flight attendants or people who work in offices or anywhere that's an airport, or even if it's a gas station that truckers go through. If you're able to spot and identify, oh, that doesn't look right, or be able to identify, oh, those are some signs of trafficking that does not seem right, then
Yeah.
there's a hotline you can call. There's people you can call to report that. And so that can help actually save a life when you're able to identify and open your eyes to see that
Mhm.
that it's happening around you.
Yeah, that's exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I think it's so important. Just even like if you're not gonna like really delve into it and like do kind of like do like join an organization or do something like that, like it's still really important to just know like the baseline, just to know that it is a real
Mhm.
issue and that it happens like right under our noses. It happens like
Yeah,
it could be your neighbor, it could be like someone close to you. And it's just important to know the signs, and it's important to know that this is a real issue that needs to be talked about more. And so that's why
absolutely.
I love education so much. And that's why I love when organizations really focus on education as one of their like selling points, I guess.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but your organization also does a lot to like spread awareness and raise awareness for a lot of people. Like what are some main ways that your organization like raises awareness for everyone?
Hmm. So we do a lot of, we partner with a lot of influencers, people who have a bigger platform to be able to share stories like Ellie and her family, to share about Princess, to share about signs of human trafficking, to just even say it's happening.
Hmm.
Some people just don't even realize it's happening today, right?
Yeah.
And so we partner with a lot of who we call our heroic friends.
Hmm.
And we partner with high schools and community members, different churches, organizations, faith communities,
Yeah.
to really educate and say, hey, this is what's happening. And so then they're able to then talk about it within their communities. And so we utilize social media, we utilize technology to also share and to educate, through campaigns online, through
Yeah.
education and awareness campaigns online, utilizing different people of influence,
Mhm.
to be able to reach the masses.
And I think that's really important. And I think
Mhm.
that's really cool actually too, like getting people like with a big platform involved in this because I mean, in this day and age, like the only thing people really listen to is like celebrities and people with big platforms.
Mhm.
I think it's really cool. And it's like it's a good tactic to like use those people to like raise awareness for this issue, an important
Mhm.
issue that everyone needs to know about.
Absolutely.
But in your course of working with unlikely heroes and doing and being in this line of work, what is one important thing you've learned from it, from both the children and from the work you've done?
Um, I think the biggest thing is that humans and children are resilient.
Mhm.
It's when you look into the eyes of a child at 8 years old who's been trafficked and you see hope,
Mhm.
hope that their life can be different, that they can dream about being, a police officer or a teacher or a mom, a caregiver, and to have a family. Like when you can see that hope in them, it just changes you in such a way where, um, for me, it made me realize if you have that much hope and if you can see a future for your life in the midst of all this pain, like I can do the same,
Mhm.
right? And that there is hope. And so many of these kids also, not only are they hoping for their future and that they are overcoming all of this trauma, but then they're also saying, we don't want this to happen to somebody else. And so Unlikely Heroes, actually the name means that one day if they choose that these kids that are rescued and that are restored can one day be the generation and be the unlikely heroes that talks and changes a generation to stop human trafficking. So like that's the name. What the meaning of Unlikely Heroes is actually means is that that one day if they choose to use their story to bring awareness and stop human trafficking. And so many of our kids want to do that, and they always say like, we don't want this to happen to somebody else, like people need to know. And so they're so brave, and I learn a lot from their stories and I learn a lot from their experiences. Absolutely.
Even hearing that, it's like those kids are amazing. Like, oh my god,
Hmm.
like
Yes.
it takes like someone with like it takes an amazing person to be able to like do that and to be like
Hmm.
have that hope to make a better future for themselves and like want to go back and help others that have gone through the same thing. It really takes an amazing person to want to do that. So
Yeah,
I mean, it's
I
amazing.
know these kids are incredible.
It really is.
They're mhm.
Um, but that's all I had. Is there anything else you'd like to
Okay.
say?
No, thank you so much. Thank
Of
you
course,
for
thank
doing
you.
this.
That was amazing.
And,
Thank you so much.
like this is so important to share and to talk about, and especially, in your generation
Yeah,
of kids that there's that the aspect of, social justice and social
yeah,
impact that is so important. You don't have to be working in a nonprofit to and doing the work I do to see a change, right, in our
yeah.
society. And what you're doing is awesome. And I really hope that people hear what you have to say and they hear that this is happening and that they are motivated and they are moved to act. So I hope this
Thank you so
turns out
much.
really great for you.
I hope so
And thank you
too.
for doing this.
Of
Thank
course.
you
Thank
so
you
much for
for talking with me.
shining a light on what's happening, in our generation.
I'll try. It's something I'm really
Yeah.
passionate about. Like I love conversations like these. I think they're really important and I think everyone should hear them. So thank you. I think your organization's amazing. I think the work is amazing. Thank you for talking with me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.